The Rubik's Cube is a puzzle that many people have tried their hand at, but few have mastered. But today, we're going to take a look at the best of the best. How has speed solving the Rubik's Cube evolved over the years? Who are the world record holders? Let's find out, shall we? But before we do, subscribe to Meat Plays Games if you'd like to see speedrunning content. I would absolutely be interested in doing more speed solving videos too if this one does well though, since it's been a hobby of mine for over 7 years. In the mid-1970s, Hungarian architecture professor Erno Rubik created the Rubik's Cube in an attempt to make a structure where some parts could move independently without the whole internal mechanism falling apart. He didn't realize he had made a puzzle until he scrambled it and tried to restore it for the first time. His father held several patents, so Erno was familiar with the process and applied for one of his own, since he figured these cubes would be easy to mass produce. The original manufacturer of the cube was a small Hungarian company that made chess pieces. Before we look at the records, let's talk about the 3 types of pieces on a Rubik's Cube. Feel free to skip ahead to the next chapter of the video if you're already familiar with this stuff. There are 6 center pieces that never move in relation to each other. These centers determine what color that face will be when the cube is solved. There are also 12 edge pieces with 2 colors, and you solve them by putting them in between the 2 corresponding center pieces. So in this diagram, the green-red edge piece is the only one that's solved. Finally, there are 8 corner pieces with 3 colors on them. So in this diagram, the yellow, orange, blue corner is between the yellow, orange, and blue centers, so it's solved. One thing to note about these world records is that they all take place in official competitions. This is a pretty big difference between speed solving a Rubik's Cube and, say, speedrunning a video game, which is the stuff we typically cover on this channel. Speedrunners can set records from home at any time they want, but in order for speedcubers to get official results, they need to go to a World Cube Association competition. The first World Rubik's Cube Championship took place in 1982, in Erno Rubik's home city of Budapest, Hungary. Competitors were selected from 19 countries to take part. Vietnamese cuber Minh Thai represented the United States after winning the US Championship with a time of 26.04 seconds in 1981. He also won a cash prize of $2,000 for winning that competition. During the World Championship, he set the first officially recognized world record at 22.95 seconds. There were some major differences between Thai's record and all those that came after it though. For one, the cubes the competitors used were hand-picked by Erno Rubik himself, which yielded mixed reactions from the people who took part. Czech champion Jessica Friedrich describes the cubes as being really hard to turn and not prepared for serious speed cubing in an article she wrote in 2003. But Judge David Singmaster said that the competitors described them as pretty good. Nowadays, cubers are expected to bring their own puzzles or borrow them from fellow competitors, as they are no longer provided by the competition organizers. This also allows cubers to set up their puzzles however they'd like. The second difference is that Thai's record used a corners first method. We'll get back to the method cubers use nowadays in a second, but what Thai did was solve the orange corners relative to each other, followed by the red corners, then the orange and red edges, then the remaining 4 edges. Corners first methods were popular back in the day because they were more intuitive to come up with and learn, and there's a wide variety of them out there, but over the years other methods have popped up that wound up being more efficient. The most popular method used today is called the CFOP method, whose name is an acronym for its 4 steps. Once again, feel free to go to the next chapter if you're familiar with it. C stands for cross, where you make a cross shape on the bottom face, making sure all the edges line up with the other centers. The F stands for F2L, which in turn is an acronym for first 2 layers. On a Rubik's Cube, solvers typically don't think about it as having 6 sides, but rather 3 layers. The cross is part of the first layer, and our next objective is to finish the rest of the first layer and the entire second layer at the same time. The way you do that is by solving pairs of first layer corners and second layer edges at the same time. Let's say I have this case here with the red-blue edge and the red-white-blue corner. What I would do here is get those 2 pieces to match up with each other like this, then insert them together to solve them both at the same time. Do that 4 times and the first 2 layers are solved. O stands for OLL, or Orient Last Layer, where the goal is to get the top face to be one color with one algorithm, and there are 57 you need to learn for this step. There are simpler versions out there with fewer algorithms, but you have to do more than one most of the time. By this point, not all of the pieces on the top layer are going to be in the right spot, so next you do PLL, permute last layer, to solve the cube. There are 21 algorithms for this step, but like OLL, there are simpler versions that you can learn, where you do 2 to 4 algorithms instead. This is a popular method because most beginner methods are simplified versions of CFOP, so it's an obvious next step when people want to get faster. The more algorithm-heavy approach means not a lot of intuitive thinking is required. In fact, some people even prefer an algorithm-based F2L. Every world record from this point on will be using the CFOP method, with some extra algorithm sets being used in some cases. Keep in mind that for simplicity's sake, I'm going to keep referring to the puzzle as the Rubik's Cube for the rest of the video, even though most cubers use puzzles made by other brands these days, and no world records in the last 10 years have been set with a Rubik's brand cube. Think of it as how you might call a tissue a Kleenex or a flying disc a Frisbee. The second officially recognized world record took place all the way in 2003 at the Second World Championship in Canada. American solver Dan Knights broke Ty's 21-year-old record with a time of 16.71 seconds at the World Rubik's Games Championship. Unfortunately, no video of this record exists, but let's take the time to talk about some other differences between the 1982 and 2003 championships. In 1982, the only puzzle they held the competition for was the original 3x3 Rubik's Cube. 2003 added a variety of new events, including blindfolded, fewest moves, one-handed, and other puzzles like the 4x4 and 5x5 cubes, Megaminx, Pyraminx, and Square 1. Later in the competition though, Danish cuber Jes Bond broke Knight's record by less than a fifth of a second, lowering it to 16.53 seconds. Unfortunately, there's no video of this record either, so what you're watching in the background is actually Lars Vandenberg unofficially tying the record later that year. This clip of Vandenberg is often erroneously included in videos of historical world records though, thinking this is Bond's solve. Looking at his video though, we see him using the CFOP method, but he starts by doing the cross on the left side, as opposed to most cubers today who solve the cross on the bottom. Cross on bottom is fastest because you don't need to rotate the entire cube when it's time to solve the last layer. We also see some finger tricks, where instead of turning every face with your entire hand, you can just use one finger. These days, a lot of emphasis is placed on learning good finger tricks, because using your hand to turn the cube means you have to constantly change your grip, making it harder to prepare for the next turn. Before we move on, let's talk about how the winner of the competition is determined. In 1982, the winner was simply whoever got the fastest time, but the 2003 championship implemented another system called the average of 5 for the final round, where each competitor would solve the cube 5 times. Your fastest and slowest times are dropped, and then your average is the mean of the remaining 3 solves. So in this competition, getting a world record single time isn't going to win you the competition. Knights wound up making it to the final round and winning the championship with an average of 20 seconds flat, despite Bond getting the fastest time of the day. It wouldn't be long until we saw the next world record. On January 24th, 2004, Japanese cuber Shotaro Makisumi attended the Caltech Winter Competition and broke the world record. Twice. In the first round, he lowered the record to 15.07 seconds, then in the final round he broke it again with a time of 14.76. He also broke the world record average, bringing it down to 16.53 seconds, which is exactly as fast as Bond's previous record single. 2.5 months later, he returned to Caltech for their spring competition, and lowered the record 3 more times. First to 13.93 seconds, then in the finals he got a 13.89, followed by a 12.11. Since the last 2 times both took place in the same round, the 13.89 isn't officially recognized as a world record. The next world record wasn't set for another 18 months, but on October 16, 2005, French speed solver Jean Pons lowered the record to 11.75 seconds at the Dutch Open. The timer you see in this video is called a stack mat. You start and stop the timer by putting both of your hands on it. This is the same timer used in cup stacking competitions, hence the stack in the name. You'll also see him take a few seconds before he starts to look at the cube and start planning his solution. This is called inspection, and you get 15 seconds of it before each solve. Over the next few years, we'd see the world record be broken 8 times and eventually reach a time of under 9 seconds. Leon Lowe, Toby Mao, Edouard Chambon, Thibaut Jacquinot, Eric Ackersdyke, Ron Van Bruchem, and Yu Nakajima would all get at least one world record between 2006 and May 2008. Nakajima set a record of 8.72 seconds, then tied his own record later that day. Then, on July 12, 2008, Eric Ackersdyke got a solve that blew everything we'd ever seen before out of the water.
Yes! Oh!
7.08 seconds. Nearly 2 full seconds faster than any solve that had come before it. A lot had to go right to get such an unprecedented time. His F2L pairs flowed really nicely into one another, and he got an easy OLL. Normally, after OLL, you have to do PLL, but he didn't this time because the entire cube was solved. That's called a PLL skip. You can also get OLL skips, where the entire top face is already one color when you finish F2L. As you can probably imagine, he went on to win that competition, the Czech Open, with an average of 11.55 seconds in the final round. Many other world records moving forward have a skip of some sort as well, or the solver forced to skip with a special algorithm. This is the last world record that's been set using a Rubik's brand cube. Since then, companies like Diane, Moyu, Qi, Yushin, and Gan have all made 3x3 cubes that have been used to break world records. But after Ackersdyke's 7.08, over 2 years passed without any new records. 2009 came and went, and 2010 nearly did as well. But in November, a 14-year-old Australian cuber decided he had something to say about that. Enter Feliks Zemdegs. Zemdegs started cubing when he was 12 years old, and he quickly became one of the best speed cubers the world had ever seen. Over the years, he's been to 118 competitions and set 121 world records across all events. He would frequently break his own records over and over in many events. But for today, let's focus on 3x3. Feliks had held the 3x3 average record since January 2010. Then, later that year, Zemdegs began a streak where he set the Rubik's Cube single world record 7 times in a row. On November 13th, 2010, Zemdegs broke Ackersdyke's single record twice at Melbourne Cube Day, first with a 7.03, then he broke sub 7 that same day with a 6.77 second solve. Then, in January of the next year, he got a 6.65 second time at Melbourne Summer Open. 3.5 months later, he tied his own record at Kubaru Open, then broke it again with a 6.24 later that day. He broke the record 2 more times at Melbourne Winter Open, posting a 6.18, followed by a 5.66, the first sub 6 time. All 7 of these world records were set with a Diane cube. At Melbourne Cube Day 2010, he used a Diane Guhong, the second in their line of speed cubes. At the next 2 competitions, he used a modified version of the cube called the Rubik's Guhong. By mid-2011, he had switched to the Diane Zanchi. Zemdegs also broke the Rubik's Cube average record 9 times in a row, holding onto it for a whopping 7 years until it was taken from him in 2017. Generally, the average record is the one speed solvers hope to get, because it shows that you're capable of consistently achieving incredible times. World record singles typically come down to luck. While cubes are scrambled using randomly generated algorithms, there's no way to be 100% certain that solvers won't find an unbelievably fast and lucky solution and get a world record time. The average record has been broken 14 times since 2010, and Zemdegs is responsible for 13 of them, including the last 4. But then, single world records stopped rolling in for a while. The rest of 2011 came and went, and so did all of 2012. The best time Zemdegs managed between his 566 and the end of 2012 was a 6.11 at Melbourne Cube Day 2012. 2013 was a different story though. On March 2nd, 2013, Dutch speedcuber Mats Valk broke Zemdegs' nearly 2-year-old record with a 5.55 second solve at Zonhoven Open. Valk used an algorithm from a set called OLS, which allows you to solve your 4th F2L pair and the entirety of OLL with one algorithm, essentially forcing an OLL skip. Then he got a really easy PLL and got the record. That record would stand for a while, but Feliks was ready to give Valk's 555 a run for its money. On June 29th, 2014, he got this solve. A 533. Unfortunately, the record didn't count. So what happened here? These days, speed cubes are designed to help people go as fast as possible. Unfortunately, that comes with some sacrifices. What happens here is that Zemdegs accidentally twists a corner in the front of the cube on the very last turn, which is pretty much impossible on the older Rubik's brand cubes. Now is a good time to explain how penalties work in cubing competitions. Zemdegs was given a DNF, short for did not finish, for this solve. You can get a DNF for a variety of reasons. If the cube is straight up unsolved, a corner is twisted, you take too long to solve the puzzle, you use a cube that breaks some other rule, or you take more than 17 seconds to inspect the puzzle, among other reasons, you get a DNF. There are also 2-second time penalties, which cubers call +2s. You get a +2 if you touch the cube before the judge gets a chance to verify that it's solved and record your time, take between 15 and 17 seconds to inspect, or stop the timer when the cube is 1 move away from being solved. So if Zemdegs was 1 move away from a solve instead of a corner twist, he would have gotten a 7.33 instead of a 5.33 or a DNF. Finally, on April 25th, 2015, the record would be taken even lower. Colin Burns set the first world record in 2 years, and it was even faster than Zemdegs' DNF the year before. We wouldn't see any new records for another 7 months, but November 21st, 2015 is a candidate for one of the wildest days in cubing history. On that day, there were 2 competitions taking place in the Northeast US, one in New York and one in Maryland. Let's take a look at what happened in these competitions. The world record was broken 3 times in 1 day. Well, sort of. Burns broke his own record with a 5.21 at the Manhasset Fall competition in New York. Unfortunately, it was discovered that he had solved a mis-scrambled cube, so the time didn't count. He got an extra attempt with a properly scrambled puzzle and went on to come in second in the competition. But 2 people at River Hill Fall had him beat anyway later that same day. First, it was Keaton Ellis with a 5.09, then it was Lucas Etter with a 4.90, the first sub-5 solve ever. The way world records work in the World Cube Association these days is that you only officially get credit for a world record if you still hold it at the end of the day. Since Eder broke Ellis's record on the same day at the same competition, if you go to Ellis's World Cube Association page, you'll see that he's never officially had a world record. You might recall from earlier that Dan Knight's record from 2003 is officially recognized, even though Yes Bond broke it later that day. And in 2004, Shotaro Makisumi set 5 records over the course of 2 one-day competitions. That's because those records took place before the World Cube Association was founded, so that was before regulations on record keeping were decided on. After another year, Mats Valk did this.
Damn!
4.74 seconds. This is the first world record that was set with a magnetic cube. The idea behind magnets is they help you turn more accurately, since the corners and edges will be magnetically attracted to each other. Every world record from this point forward will be set using a magnetic cube. The cube he's using is called the Valk M, a collaboration between him and cube company Chiyi. Specifically, he was using a Cubicle Labs Valk M, a cube that had been set up for him by an online store called The Cubicle. The Cubicle is known for its labs service, as well as their premium lubricants. Actually, while we're at it, that's another thing. Cubers lubricate their puzzles to make sure they turn as well as possible. Valk's record wouldn't stand for long though, because Zemdegs got this solved just a month later. Oh! 4.73 seconds, just 1 centisecond faster than Valk's. Feliks Zemdegs was back on top. Remember that at this point, he was still in the middle of a 7-year streak of holding the average record, but this was his first single record in 5 years. He set this record at the Pops Open on December 11th. Despite his efforts though, Valk attended the competition as well, and wound up winning, also setting a Dutch national record in 3x3 average along the way. Valk described the finals against Zemdegs to be probably the most intense final ever. In 2017, we'd see the record come down 2 more times.
What?
American cuber Patrick Ponce entered the record books for the first time on September 2nd, 2017 at Rally in the Valley. Then on October 28th, Korean solver Sung Byum Cho broke the record with a 4.59 at Chicago's 2017. The year came to a close with no more new records, but Feliks made things interesting once again in January the next year. On January 27th, 2018, Feliks Zemdegs tied Cho's record of 4.59 seconds. You might have noticed that Cho's time was 4.591, but Zemdegs was actually slower at 4.594. This is still considered a tie, because the World Cube Association rounds all their times down to the nearest hundredth of a second, so both times are entered as a 4.59 into their database. But Feliks wasn't done just yet.
Come on, get us up 5.
On May 6th of the same year, Feliks lowered his record one more time to 4.22 seconds. To this day, it's his most recent single world record in the 3x3 event, but he still holds the average record to this day. 6 months later though, that time would be blown out of the water. Yusheng Du broke the world record by 3/4 of a second on November 24th, 2018 at Woohoo Open. His 3.47 second time came out of absolutely nowhere, and unfortunately the only footage of the solve that exists is the security camera video. To put things into perspective, it took 2.5 years and 7 world records to bring the time down 680 milliseconds from 4.90 to 4.22 seconds. This one solve shaved off more time than all of those records combined. That's not the entire story though. We actually could have gotten a sub 4 a few months sooner. At the Cupertino leg of the West Coast Cubing Tour on July 15th, Jaden McNeil got this solve. McNeil was on pace to solve the cube in under 4 seconds, but he dropped it with 1 turn to go. What's funny though is that this 4.97 second solve is still his fastest in competition to this day. Thanks to Yu Shangdu, we didn't wind up having to wait much longer for the first 3-second solve. So that's where the record stands today, 3.47 seconds. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there have been far fewer competitions around the world over the last year and change, and not many chances to break world records. But competitions are making a return in some countries, so it's only a matter of time. The unofficial world record and fastest solve on camera ever is a 2.68, recently set by 12-year-old Chinese speedcuber Ruihang Xu. So I'm sure the official record will eventually be broken. One more tidbit before I go. I didn't include this earlier in the video for the sake of keeping a decent pace, so let's talk about some records we know of that aren't recognized by the WCA. These times are both faster than Min Tai's record at the 1982 championships. German solver Ronald Brinkmann won the West Germany Championship in 1982 with a 19-second solve, and Robert Pergel got a 17.04 at the 1983 Czechoslovakian Championship. Leave a comment if you'd like to see more speed solving videos alongside our regular speedrunning content, and subscribe for new videos on the weekends. Good night fellas, sleep well.